The falling pieces of concrete made soft sounds as they rolled down the mountain of rubble. Captain Doohan wiped the sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of gray dust across his tanned skin. His scanner beeped steadily, searching for anything valuable in the remains of what was once a research building in New Seoul. "Nothing but broken dreams here," he muttered to himself, kicking aside a twisted piece of metal. The hot summer sun beat down on his back as he climbed higher up the pile of broken concrete and steel. His old boots, worn from years of climbing through ruins, found steady places to step. The scanner in his hand suddenly let out a different sound, a high-pitched beep that made Doohan stop. He looked at the screen, frowning at the unusual reading. Life signs, that's impossible. The attack was 3 days ago. But the scanner didn't lie. Somewhere under the rubble, something was alive. Doohan pulled out his handheld shovel and began to dig. His movements were quick but careful. If someone was really alive down there, he didn't want to cause another collapse. After 15 minutes of moving debris, he saw a hand. A human hand. Pale but warm. "Hold on," he called out, though he wasn't sure if the person could hear him. "I'm going to get you out." It took another 30 minutes of careful digging before he cleared enough rubble to see her face. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, with delicate features and long black hair now gray with dust. Her clothes were torn but expensive looking. She was breathing steadily, as if in a deep sleep. "Mom." Doohan gently touched her shoulder. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. They were a striking amber color, unusual for someone who appeared to be of Korean descent. She looked at him with confusion, then fear. "It's okay," Doohan said softly, raising his empty hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm Captain Doohan. I'm a salvage operator. Are you hurt?" The woman tried to sit up but winced. I think my ribs are bruised." Her voice was quiet but clear. "How long was I under there?" "The attack was 3 days ago. You're lucky to be alive." Doohan reached for his water bottle. "Here, drink something. What's your name?" She took a small sip of water before answering. "Hae-hyun. My name is Hae-hyun." There was a slight hesitation before she said the name, but Doohan blamed it on her confused state. "Well, Hae-hyun, we need to get you somewhere safe. My ship is about half a kilometer from here. Can you walk if I help you?" She nodded slowly. Doohan helped her stand, supporting most of her weight. As they made their slow way down the rubble pile, he noticed something odd. For someone who had been trapped under debris for 3 days, she was remarkably clean under the surface dust, and she didn't seem dehydrated at all. But he pushed these thoughts aside. He had learned long ago that asking too many questions in this line of work usually led to trouble. If she wanted to share her story, she would do so in her own time. The walk to his ship, the Wandering Star, took almost an hour. Hae-hyun didn't complain once, though Doohan could tell she was in pain. When they finally reached the ship, a battered but well-maintained cargo vessel, his medical droid MB-7 was waiting at the entrance ramp. "Captain, I detected your approach with an additional life form," the droid said in its calm voice. "Shall I prepare the medical bay?" "Yes, please. Our guest has been through quite an ordeal." Hae-hyun looked at the medical droid with what seemed like relief. As MB-7 led them to the small but clean medical bay, Doohan noticed her studying the ship's interior with careful eyes. Not the way a scared survivor would look at their sanctuary, but how an expert would evaluate a piece of equipment. "Please lie down here," MB-7 instructed, gesturing to the examination table. "I will need to scan you for injuries." As the droid began its examination, Doohan stepped back. "I'll give you some privacy. MB-7 will take good care of you. I need to check something in the cockpit." Hae-hyun caught his arm as he turned to leave. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Thank you, Captain Doohan, for finding me, for helping me." He gave her a small smile. It's what any decent person would do. In the cockpit, Doohan sat heavily in the pilot's seat. He should feel good about saving a life. Instead, something felt off. He pulled up the ship's communications array, planning to check if anyone was looking for missing people after the attack. The screen suddenly lit up with an incoming emergency broadcast. Doohan's eyes widened as he read the message. Priority ALERT. All systems. Wanted. Extremely dangerous individual. Reward. 50 million Suriditis. The image that followed made his blood run cold. It showed a woman with amber eyes and delicate features. Her hair was shorter and styled differently. But there was no doubt, it was Hedian. The message continued. Subi GCTI's ALEL-1 threat to galactic CQRT. Approach with extreme CAUCHINAN. If SSPOTTED, REPORT IMMEDTLY, to NERESTCOALICHAN authority. Doohan leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his graying hair. 50 million credits was more money than he would earn in 10 lifetimes of salvage work. It was enough to buy a new ship, to start a new life anywhere he wanted. He thought about his family, lost in the Titan colony massacre 15 years ago. He had sworn then to never get involved in politics or conflicts again. Just keep his head down, do his work, and survive. But something about this didn't add up. The woman in his medical bay didn't seem dangerous. Mysterious, yes, but dangerous. And why would the Coalition consider a single person a level 1 threat? The medical bay's comm unit buzzed. Captain, MB7's voice came through. I have completed my examination. There is something you should see. Doohan looked at the wanted notice one more time, then switched off the screen. Whatever decision he was going to make, it would have to wait until he had more information. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and headed back to the medical bay, where the most wanted woman in the galaxy was waiting. As he walked, he checked that his blaster was secure in its holster, just in case. After all, survival had taught him that it was better to be careful than dead. Doohan entered the medical bay with careful steps. Hei-Yun sat on the examination table, her posture straight and alert despite her claimed injuries. MB7 stood nearby, its sensor lights blinking rapidly, a sign that the droid was processing complex information. Captain, MB7 said, the patient's scan results are unusual. Hei-Yun's amber eyes met Doohan's. She didn't look surprised or worried. Instead, she looked like someone who had finally made an important decision. Show him, she said quietly. MB7 projected a hologram showing 2 DNA patterns. The left pattern shows normal human DNA. The right pattern is the patient's DNA. Notice the differences in the quantum signature. Doohan wasn't a scientist, but even he could see that the right pattern had strange, swirling sections that seemed to shift and change as he watched. What am I looking at? He asked, his hand unconsciously moving closer to his blaster. Hei-Yun stood up slowly. My real name is Sunme, and I think you've probably seen the alert by now. Doohan nodded, keeping his distance. 50 million credits. That's a lot of money for one person. It's not enough for what I discovered. Sunme walked to the hologram and pointed to the shifting patterns. This is why they want me. I found a way to change human consciousness, to free it from the limits of space and time. Doohan frowned. You mean like teleportation? No, something much more important. Sunme's voice grew excited, like a teacher sharing a favorite subject. Imagine if you could send not just your body, but your entire consciousness across the galaxy in an instant. No ships, no hyperspace gates, no waiting. Just pure thought traveling at the speed of light. That's impossible, Doohan said. 6 months ago, I did it. I sent my consciousness to a receiver on Mars and back. It worked perfectly. Sunme's face darkened. That's when everything went wrong. A loud alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Doohan rushed to the nearest computer terminal. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace, coming in fast. Bounty hunters, Sunme said grimly. They're already tracking us. Du-Han made a quick decision. MB-7, prepare the ship for emergency takeoff. Sun Mai, if you're not really injured, I could use help in the cockpit. They ran through the ship's corridors as the first shots from the pursuing vessels shook the wandering star. In the cockpit, Du-Han jumped into the pilot's seat while Sun Mi took the co-pilot position without hesitation. "You know how to fly?" he asked, firing up the engines. "I learned many things while developing my research. Flying was a useful skill." Her fingers flew over the controls with practiced ease. Shield power diverted to rear. "They're using ion cannons. They want to disable us, not destroy us." The wandering star lifted off as energy bolts streaked past. Du-Han steered them toward the broken buildings, using the ruins for cover. "Why didn't you tell me the truth right away?" he asked, taking them into a sharp turn that made the ship's frame groan. "Because I needed to know if you were trustworthy." Sun Mai activated the rear defense systems. "The Coalition wants my discovery to create an army of soldiers with linked minds. The Stellar Dominion wants to use it to control everyone's thoughts. I couldn't risk choosing wrong." A blast rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Port engines hit," Du-Han called out. "We need to get to open space, or we're finished." Sun Mi pressed several buttons in quick succession. "I'm redirecting power from life support. We can last 10 minutes without it." The ship surged forward with renewed speed. Du-Han guided them higher, weaving between shots from their pursuers. The ruins of New Seoul fell away beneath them as they climbed toward the stars. "There's something you should know," Sun Mi said as they broke through the atmosphere. "My discovery isn't just about moving consciousness. It's about evolving it, taking humanity to its next stage." "Can we discuss philosophy after we escape?" Du-Han asked, plotting a hyperspace jump. "You don't understand. The reason they're so desperate to find me is that I've already begun the process. In myself." She held up her hand, and Du-Han watched in amazement as it seemed to shimmer and fade slightly. "I'm changing. And soon, others could too." Another blast hit them, stronger this time. The hyperspace calculator began its countdown, 30 seconds to jump. "Captain," MB-7's voice came over the intercom. "2 more ships have appeared ahead of us. They are broadcasting Coalition identification codes." Du-Han looked at their fuel levels, their damaged engine, and the ships closing in from all sides. Then he looked at Sun Mi, who met his gaze without fear. "If I help you," he said, "I'll be marked as a traitor. I'll never be able to work in Coalition space again." "If you help me," she replied, "you'll be part of the biggest change in human history since we left Earth." The hyperspace calculator showed 15 seconds. The pursuing ships were charging their weapons. In that moment, Du-Han remembered his family on Titan Colony, how the Coalition had abandoned them during the massacre. He remembered years of living alone, taking salvage jobs just to keep flying. "MB-7, he called out, "reroute all remaining power to the hyperspace drive. Everything except life support and engine control." "A risky decision, Captain," the droid responded, but did as ordered. 10 seconds, Sun Mi announced. The enemy ships fired. "If we survive this," Du-Han said, his hand steady on the controls, "you're going to tell me everything. No more secrets. Deal." Sun Mi's fingers danced across the navigation panel. "But first, I need to show you something." Changing course for the outer rim. The hyperspace countdown reached 0, just as the enemy shots were about to hit. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the wandering star vanished into hyperspace, leaving their pursuers behind. In the sudden quiet of hyperspace travel, Du-Han finally released his death grip on the controls. The outer rim is crawler territory, pirates, outlaws, and worse. "Yes," Sun Mi agreed, already working on repairing systems through her console. "But it's also where we'll find the only person who can help us understand what's really happening. My old teacher, Professor Yoonji, the one who disappeared 20 years ago." The Coalition said she died in a lab accident. Sunma smiled. The Coalition says many things. Most of them are lies. She pointed to a distant star on the navigation map. That's where we'll find her, and where I'll show you what humanity could become. Duhan leaned back in his chair, watching the swirling patterns of hyperspace through the cockpit window. In less than a day, he had gone from being a simple salvage operator to a wanted man harboring the galaxy's most valuable fugitive. And somehow, he felt more alive than he had in years. MB7, he called out, start repairs on the port engine. We got a long journey ahead of us. As the droid acknowledged the order, Duhan glanced at Sunma. She had closed her eyes and seemed to be concentrating deeply. The air around her shimmered slightly, like heat waves rising from hot metal. Whatever he had gotten himself into, Duhan had a feeling that the galaxy was about to change forever. And for better or worse, he would be there to see it happen. The wandering star limped through space like a wounded animal. After 3 days of running on minimal power, they finally reached the hidden station, where Duhan's old friend Captain Jeho operated his secret resistance network. The station looked like an abandoned mining facility from the outside, floating quietly in the darkness between 2 asteroid fields. Remember, Duhan said as they prepared to dock, Jeho can be difficult. Let me do the talking. Sun Li nodded, though she kept watching the station with careful eyes. Her skin had taken on a slight shimmer over the past few days, like sunlight on clear water. Duhan tried not to stare, but the changes in her were becoming harder to ignore. A gruff voice came over the ship's comm system. Identify yourself, or be shot into space dust. It's Duhan, you old rust bucket. My ship needs repairs, and I have a passenger who needs your help. There was a long pause. Duhan. The same Duhan who owes me money from our last card game. The same Duhan who saved your life during the Rim Wars. Duhan replied with a small smile. The docking bay doors opened slowly. Get in here before someone sees you. And this time, bring better drinks than that engine cleaner you called whiskey last time. Inside the station, they found Jeho waiting with 4 armed guards. He was a short man with gray hair and a cybernetic eye that glowed soft blue in the dim light. When he saw Sunma, his artificial eye whirred as it focused on her. Well, Jeho said quietly. You've brought me quite a problem, old friend. You know who I am? Sunma asked. Everyone with half a brain and access to the dark networks knows who you are. Jeho waved away his guards. The Coalition has doubled the reward for information about you. They're saying you stole dangerous technology. They're lying, Sunma said. I didn't steal anything. I discovered something. Something they want to use as a weapon. Jeho led them through narrow corridors to a secure room filled with computers and communication equipment. The walls were covered in star maps and wanted posters. Duhan noticed that Sunma's picture was now at the center of the largest screen. Show me, Jeho said, sitting in a worn chair. Show me what was worth destroying half of New Seoul to try to capture you. Sunma looked at Duhan, who nodded encouragingly. She closed her eyes and held out her hand. The air around her began to ripple like waves on water. Then, slowly, her hand became transparent. Not invisible, they could see through it to the other side of the room, as if her flesh had turned to living glass. By the stars, Jeho whispered, the quantum consciousness transfer. You actually did it. Not just transfer, Sunma said, her hand returning to normal. Evolution. I found a way to free human consciousness from its physical limits, to let it grow beyond what we thought possible. Jeho stood up and walked to a secure terminal. 3 weeks ago, my network intercepted Coalition messages about an attack on a research facility. They said they were stopping terrorists, but my people found something different. He pulled up images of a destroyed laboratory. They weren't trying to stop terrorists. They were trying to steal research data. My laboratory, Sunma said softly. I destroyed everything before they could take it. All my notes, all my equipment. Everything except what's in my head. And now they want what's in your head badly enough to burn down cities to find you. Jeho turned to Duhan. You understand what helping her means. The Coalition won't stop. The Dominion won't stop. Every bounty hunter and glory seeker in the galaxy will be looking for your ship. Then help us hide, Duhan said. You have the best stealth technology in the Outer Rim. Help us modify the Wandering Star. Jeho scratched his chin thoughtfully. It will take time, and resources, and... A loud explosion rocked the station. Warning sirens began to blare. We have incoming ships, a voice shouted over the station's comm system. Coalition signatures. How did they find us? Duhan demanded. Jeho was already checking his security feeds. His cybernetic eye flashed red. Someone in my network. Someone told them. He slammed his fist on the desk. We have a traitor. More explosions shook the station. Sun Mei grabbed Duhan's arm. We need to leave. Now. Too late, Jeho said, pointing to the screens showing space around the station. 3 Coalition warships just dropped out of hyperspace, plus at least 6 smaller attack vessels. You'll never get past them in your damaged ship. Duhan looked at Sun Mei, then at his old friend. What about your emergency escape shuttle? The one with the experimental stealth drive? Absolutely not, Jeho said. That drive isn't stable. One wrong move, and it could tear the ship apart. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered. Station shields at 40%. The comm system announced. Jeho, Duhan said firmly, you owe me, and you know the Coalition will kill everyone on this station to get to her. Jeho cursed in 3 different languages. Then he pressed his hand to a hidden scanner on his desk. A section of wall slid open, revealing a sleek black shuttle. The stealth drive runs hot, he explained as they rushed to the shuttle. You'll have maybe 20 minutes before it overheats. The controls are standard, but there's a delay between commands and execution. Like flying through syrup. They could hear weapons fire in the corridor outside. MB7, who had been quietly monitoring the situation, spoke up from Duhan's communicator. Captain, I have transferred essential ship data to the shuttle's computers, but I must stay with the Wandering Star. Take care of her, old friend, Duhan said to his droid. To Jeho, he added, get your people to safety. And thank you. Don't thank me yet, Jeho replied. You still have to survive. He handed Duhan a small data chip. Emergency coordinates, places my network uses to hide. Now go, before we all die here. Duhan and Sun Mei boarded the shuttle quickly. The cockpit was cramped but advanced, with holographic displays replacing traditional controls. As Duhan started the engines, Sun Mei studied the stealth drive readings. The quantum field is unstable, she said, but I might be able to help with that. She placed her hand on the drive housing, and the shimmer around her skin seemed to spread to the machine. The warning lights turned from red to yellow. How did you? Later, she said. Fly now. Duhan guided the shuttle out of its hangar just as another explosion rocked the station. The Coalition ships were everywhere, their weapons lighting up space like artificial stars. But as the stealth drive engaged, the shuttle seemed to fade from view. They're not firing at us, Duhan realized. They can't see us. No, Sun Mei said, her voice strained as she maintained contact with the drive. But we need to move fast. I can feel the drive getting hotter. We need to get to hyperspace before it fails. Duhan piloted them through the chaos of battle, feeling the sluggish response of the controls that Jeho had warned about. Every move had to be planned in advance. Every turn started early. Behind them, the station was taking heavy damage, but he could see escape pods launching from multiple bays. At least Jeho and his people had a chance. Hyperspace calculations complete, the shuttle's computer announced. Drive temperature approaching critical levels. Hold on, Duhan said, and engage the hyperspace drive. The stars stretched into lines, and they escaped into the safety of hyperspace. Sun Mai removed her hand from the drive housing and slumped in her seat, looking exhausted. "What you did back there," Du Han said quietly, "with the drive. That wasn't just quantum consciousness transfer, was it?" Sun Mi shook her head slowly. "My discovery, it's changing me, letting me interact with machines in ways that shouldn't be possible. And it's happening faster now." She held up her hand, which was now permanently shadowed with that water-like shimmer. "We need to find Yunji soon, before the changes become too much for my body to handle." Du Han checked their course on Jaiho's data chip. "The nearest safe harbor is 3 hours away. Rest now. I'll wake you when we get there." As Sun Mi drifted into an uneasy sleep, Du Han watched the swirling patterns of hyperspace and thought about how much his life had changed in just a few days. He had lost his ship, his droid, and any chance of a normal life in Coalition space. But somehow, sitting in a stolen shuttle with the most wanted woman in the galaxy, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Earth looked different than Du Han had imagined. The ancient home of humanity was wrapped in swirling white clouds, with vast blue oceans beneath. After so many years of living among the stars, seeing the birthplace of his species made his heart beat faster. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Sun Mai said softly. Her skin now rippled constantly like sunlight on water. In the week since their escape from Jaiho Station, the changes in her had accelerated. Sometimes Du Han could see right through her, as if she was made of living glass. They had followed Jaiho's coordinates to a hidden landing site in a place once called New Zealand. The stolen shuttle's stealth drive had finally failed just as they entered Earth's atmosphere, but there were no coalition ships in orbit. Earth was considered too primitive, too protected by ancient laws, for anyone to risk coming here. A single figure waited for them as they landed in a green valley surrounded by mountains. Professor Yunji was tall and thin, with white hair that reached her waist. She wore simple brown clothes that made her look like a farmer rather than one of the greatest scientists in human history. "My dear Sun Mi," Yunji said as they walked down the shuttle's ramp, "I have been waiting for you." Sun Mi ran to her old teacher and hugged her. Du Han watched as ripples of energy passed between them. Sun Mi's quantum shimmer meeting something similar, but more controlled in Yunji. "You knew this would happen," Sun Mi said, stepping back. "You knew what my research would lead to." "I suspected." Yunji turned to Du Han and bowed slightly. "Thank you for protecting my student, Captain Du Han. Please, both of you come inside. We have much to discuss, and not much time." Yunji's home was built into the side of a mountain. Inside, it was filled with a strange mix of ancient paper books and advanced scientific equipment. Holograms danced on the walls, showing complex patterns that reminded Du Han of Sun Mi's transformed DNA. 20 years ago, Yunji said as they sat around a wooden table, "I discovered the first hints of what Sun Mi would later prove. That human consciousness could exist beyond our physical forms, that we could evolve into something new." She poured them tea in simple cups. "The Coalition tried to take my research then, just as they tried to take Sun Mi's now. So I ran. I came here to study in peace." "But what is happening to me?" Sun Mi asked. Her hands trembled as she held her cup, ripples of energy making the tea inside shake. "The changes are coming faster now. Sometimes I can barely hold my physical form together." "You are becoming what humanity was always meant to become," Yunji said simply. "A bridge between matter and energy, between thought and reality." She reached out and touched Sun Mi's shimmering hand. "Your discovery wasn't just about moving consciousness through space. It was about freeing it from the limits of flesh entirely." Du Han set down his cup carefully. "You're saying humans can become energy beings." "More than that," Sun Mi said suddenly, her eyes wide with understanding. "We can become whatever we imagine. Energy, matter, data, quantum probability, all at once." She looked at her hands as they shifted between solid and transparent. "That's what's happening to me, isn't it? I'm not losing control. I'm gaining new forms of control. Yoonji smiled. Now you understand. But alarms suddenly blared from hidden sensors. Holograms shifted to show multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace above Earth. Coalition and Dominion ships, Duhan said grimly. They must have followed our trail somehow. No, Yoonji said, standing quickly. They followed the quantum ripples of Sun Mei's transformation. She's changing so quickly now that they could track the energy signature. She pressed her hand to a wall, and part of it slid away to reveal a hidden laboratory. Quickly, inside, the laboratory was filled with equipment Duhan had never seen before. At its center stood a large circular platform surrounded by pillars of crystal that pulsed with inner light. This is what I've been building for 20 years, Yoonji explained as she activated complex controls. A quantum consciousness amplifier. It can help control and direct the transformation process. She turned to Sunma. You need to make a choice, my dear. And quickly. Sunma's form was now barely holding together, her body shifting between solid and energy with each breath. What choice? You can use the amplifier to stabilize your current form, to stop the transformation. Or, Yoonji paused, or you can embrace the change completely. Become what you were meant to be. And show humanity its next step. The building shook as ships entered the atmosphere. On the monitoring screens, Duhan could see coalition dropships launching, full of soldiers. They'll kill everyone to get to me, Sunmai said quietly. She turned to Duhan, her ever-changing face full of emotion. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to understand what we could become. Duhan stepped closer to her, ignoring the energy that crackled around her form. When I found you in that rubble, I thought I was saving someone. Instead, you saved me. You gave me purpose again. He smiled sadly. Whatever you choose, I'm glad I was part of it. Sun Mai reached out and touched his face. Her hand felt like a warm breeze. Thank you for believing in me. She turned to Yoonji. I know what I have to do. She walked to the platform as coalition forces began breaking through the outer defenses. Yoonji worked the controls while Duhan watched the security feeds, his blaster ready. The transformation will release enormous amounts of energy, Yoonji warned. The coalition forces will be affected, but you'll both need to take cover. Both of us? Duhan asked. What about you? Yoonji smiled, and for a moment her form shimmered just like Sunmi's. I completed my own transformation years ago. I simply choose to appear solid most of the time. She finished the activation sequence. It's time. Sunmai stood in the center of the platform as crystal pillars began to pulse with increasing power. Her form was now pure energy, barely holding a human shape. She looked at Duhan one last time. Find me in the stars, she said softly. The world exploded with light. When Duhan could see again, the laboratory was untouched, but the entire mountainside had been transformed. Trees, rocks, and earth had become crystalline, transmuting into something between matter and energy. Coalition soldiers lay unconscious, their weapons transformed into flowing sculptures of light and crystal. Where Sun Mai had stood, a being of pure energy floated gently. She still held a human shape, but now she was made of light and thought, and possibility. Beside her, Yoonji had also released her solid form, becoming a similar being of energy and wisdom. The soldiers will wake soon, Energy Sun Mai said, her voice somehow both silent and all-encompassing. They'll find their weapons change, their ships transformed, and they'll begin to understand what humanity can become. A gift, Yoonji added, freely given to all who choose to accept it. The next step in human evolution cannot be forced or controlled. It must be chosen. Duhan looked at his hands, seeing them as solid and real and wonderfully human. What happens now? Sun Mi floated closer to him. Now we show humanity what's possible, not through force or fear, but through hope and choice. Her energy form reached out to him. Will you help us? There will be those who resist, who fear change. They'll need someone to help them understand. Duhan thought about his years of loneliness after losing his family, about the joy he had found in helping Sunmei, about the wonder of seeing humanity's next step begin. "Well," he said with a smile, "I did want to see the stars." Above them, the sky had changed. The energy release had transformed Earth's atmosphere into a shifting aurora of possibility that would be visible from every human world. A beacon of hope, a signal that humanity was ready for its next great adventure. Sunmi's energy form pulsed with happiness. "Then let's begin. There's so much more to discover." As Coalition and Dominion ships retreated from Earth's orbit, their weapons and technology transformed by the quantum wake, Duhan stood in the crystalline valley with two beings of pure energy who had once been women of science. The wind carried the scent of transformation, of change, of hope. Humanity's next chapter was about to begin. And somewhere in the rubble of an abandoned city, it had all started with a simple act of kindness, one person helping another, not knowing they would change the galaxy forever.